Hey friends, Michael Warren here from Essential Guitar Lessons, and let's learn all about music theory for guitarists. This is part 7, so make sure you've watched part 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 before you tackle this one, and I'll put a link in the description for you. Don't forget, if you like this lesson, to subscribe and hit the notification bell, and check out my YouTube channel, Essential Guitar Lessons. Lots of songs and lessons for all levels, and new lessons uploaded weekly, and I'll put a link in the description. Now, if you have any problems with this lesson, please leave a comment and I'll get back to you. Now, today we'll learn about intervals and 2 different ways to find them. Now, intervals are great for ear training, and they're used all the time in music theory to describe the relationship between 2 notes. So let's start. What is an interval? All it is the distance between 2 notes. And an interval has 2 parts, a number and a quality. And we can also say whether it's harmonic or melodic. So let's start with harmonic and melodic, because this is really easy. Harmonic means if we play them together, so the 2 notes are played together at the same time. So that's harmonic. Melodic means if we play one note after the other. And that's melodic. So that's easy. Harmonic, play them together. Melodic, one note after the other. Now, when we work out an interval, you always start from the lower note. So always a lower note up to a higher note. Never start with the higher note and go to the lower note. Always the lower note first. So the lower note on the staff and the lower note on your guitar. So let's move on to the number. This is easy too. With the numbers, we just count the musical letters. So A, B, C, D, E, F and G. When you're counting, don't worry about the sharps and flats. So say we have A to D, we don't count A sharp, B, C, C sharp and D. We just count A, B, C, D. So we have a fourth. So we must remember to always include the first note as our 1. So A, B, C and D. Let's have a quick look at some other ones. If I wanted to go B to F, B, C, D, E, F, I would have a 5th there, so it's pretty easy. G to C, we'd have G, A, B, C, so that'd be a 4th. What about E to F? It'd just be E, F, that would be a 2nd. And A to G, we'd have A, B, C, D, E, F and G, and that would be a 7th there. So that's pretty easy. Just count the musical letters. Now, if one or both of the notes have a sharp or a flat, still just count the letters. Don't worry about the sharp or flat, and add that in once you've done the count. So let's say we wanted to go from A sharp to F. I'd just count A, B, C, D, E, F, still a 6. Then I'd say A sharp to F is still a 6. We're going to say B flat to D, just leave out the flat for the moment. B, C, D. So B flat to D is still a 3rd. We just add the flat in once we've done our count. If I wanted to go C to F sharp, I just go C, D, E, F. It's a 4th, and so C to F sharp's a 4th. And let's say we went A to C flat, it'd still be A, B, C. It'd still be a 3rd, so A to C flat's a 3rd. If we were doing C sharp to F sharp, we'd still go C, D, E, F, and then we can add both the sharps. So C sharp to F sharp is still a 4th. So our numbers are pretty easy. Just count up, and remember, we're only going to G. We only go A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then go back to A. No matter where you started, we only ever go to G. And remember, the first note we count is the number 1. The next thing we need to know is the quality. And the qualities we use are perfect, major, minor, diminished and augmented. So for major we write a capital M, for minor we use a lowercase m, for the perfect we use a capital P, for diminished we use a lowercase d, for augmented we use a capital A. So that's our qualities there. Perfect, major, minor, diminished and augmented. Now when we have the same note with the same pitch, we call it a unison. And that's the only one we call a unison. So that's pretty easy. Same note, same pitch. So if we look at our staff, if I had C to C, that's a unison. F to F's a unison. We had G sharp to G sharp, that's a unison. So same note, same pitch, we call the unison. Now the unison, 4th, 5th and the octave, so the 8th note, they are the only ones that can be perfect. The second, third, sixth and seventh can be major or minor, and they can all be diminished or augmented. Now don't worry too much as we get into it, it'll make more sense. Now the next thing we need to know is what happens to each quality if I sharpen or flatten them by a semitone or 1/2 step. So let's have a look at that. Now the unison, if I don't do anything to it, we call it a perfect unison. If I raise it by a semitone, it becomes augmented, and that's all you can do to the unison. It can be perfect or augmented. The perfect, if I raise it by a semitone, becomes augmented. If I lower it by a semitone, it becomes diminished. Now the major, if I raise it by a semitone, it becomes augmented. If I lower it by a semitone, it becomes minor. And if I lower the minor by a semitone, it becomes diminished. So you can see on the chart how major and minor work. If I raise the minor by 1 semitone, it becomes a major. And if I raise it again, it becomes augmented. If I lower it by the semitone, the minor, it becomes diminished. Now again, this will make more sense as we get into it. Just write out this chart, and if you can, try and remember it. Now for this to work, we need a starting point. So we're going to use the major scale. And these intervals are the same for every single major scale. So let's start off with C. Now each time we're doing this, we're comparing the interval for the first note of the scale. So we have our C major, so C to D is a major second, C to E is a major third, C to F is a perfect fourth, C to G is a perfect fifth, C to A is a major sixth, and C to B is a major seventh, and C to C, an octave higher, is a perfect octave. And that goes for all the major scales, so let's do another. So if we had E major, E to F sharp would be a major second, E to G sharp would be a major third, E to A would be a perfect fourth, E to B would be a perfect fifth, E to C sharp would be a major sixth, E to D sharp would be a major seventh, and E to E, an octave higher, is a perfect octave. So they're the intervals to our E major scale. Let's have a look at B flat major. So B flat to C would be a major second, B flat to D would be a major third, B flat to E flat would be a perfect fourth, B flat to F would be a perfect fifth, B flat to G would be a major sixth, B flat to A would be a major seventh, and B flat to B flat, an octave higher, is a perfect octave. So you can see it doesn't matter if we're using major scales with sharps or flats, the intervals for every major scale stays exactly the same. A major second, a major third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, major sixth, a major seventh, and a perfect eighth. So every major scale has these intervals. So now let's work off the major scale and see how it all works. Now remember, whatever note I start on, that's the major scale I use. So let's do some. So let's start with C to F. So we do our count first. We have C, D, E, F. So that's a 4 there, or a fourth. So now we just bring up our C major scale because that's our starting note. And we know now by looking at our major scale, we know the intervals. C to F is a perfect fourth because that's the way the major scales are. So that's nice and easy. C to F is a perfect fourth. Let's do C to G. Again, start with your count. C, D, E, F, G. So that's a fifth there. We bring up our C major scale because that's our starting note, and we already know C to G on our major scale is a perfect fifth. So nice and easy. Let's do C to D. So we do our count. C, D, so that's a second. And again, we bring up our C major scale, and that's nice and easy. We already know C to D is a major second. Let's do a few others there. Let's do E to C sharp and see what happens there. So we're going to start with E and we're going to do our count. So E, F, G, A, B, C. So it's going to be a sixth, and we don't know what type of sixth it's going to be. So we bring up our E major scale this time because E is our starting note. And if we look at our E major scale, we already have E to C sharp, and that's a major sixth. So E to C sharp is a major sixth. Let's do E to G sharp. So again, I just count again, E, F, G. So it's going to be a third. Again, bring up your E major scale because that's our starting note. And we already know G sharp, that's the major third. So E to G sharp is the major third. Let's do B flat to A. So we're going to count from B. So we have B, C, D, E, F, G, A. So it's going to be a seventh of some sort. So this time bring up the B flat major scale. And again, we can see in our major scale, A is just a major seventh. So B flat to A is a major seventh. So that's pretty easy. If the notes are already part of the major scale, we already know our formula. So that's nice and easy to do. Now let's do a few where the notes don't naturally fall into the major scale and see what happens there. So let's do C to G sharp. So we do our count as normal. So we have C, D, E, F, G. So we know it's a fifth of some sort there. Then we just bring up our C major scale because that's our starting note. And if we see our C major just has a natural G, so no sharp or flat, and that makes it a perfect fifth. So this time we bring up the first chart we looked at, and what happens to a perfect when we sharpen it? It becomes augmented. So the 5 stays the same. Now we have an augmented fifth there instead of a perfect fifth because it's G sharp. So C to G sharp's an augmented fifth. So what if we were to do C to G flat? Again, we do our count, C, D, E, F, G. So again, it's still a fifth, but we don't know what type of fifth it is. So we have our C major scale. And if we look at that, the G is natural, which would be a perfect fifth. And again, we look at our next chart and we say, what do we do with a perfect when we flatten it or lower it by a semitone, which we've done to the G, makes it diminished. So that would be a diminished fifth interval there. Let's have a look at C to F sharp. So we do our count again, C, D, E, F. So it's going to be a fourth. C to F is a fourth. We bring up our C major scale because that's our starting note. Now when I look at my C major scale, I have F and not F sharp, and that would be a perfect fourth. And we look at our next chart, and that says, what do I do to a perfect when I raise it by a semitone? I make it augmented. So that would be an augmented fourth, C to F sharp. Let's do another one. Let's do C to F flat. Again, we know it's a fourth. We know C to F is a perfect fourth from our major scale. I've flattened it, so we have a look at our chart. We know when we flatten a perfect, it becomes diminished. So our C to F flat would be a diminished fourth interval. So let's have a look at C to C sharp. Now this isn't the octave higher, this is the C one semitone apart. So we have C to C sharp. So we have our unison this time, which would be C to C, and we call that a perfect unison. So for the unison, we just have to remember if we sharpen again a perfect, it becomes augmented. So what have we got? We've got C to C, which would normally be a perfect unison. What do we do to the perfect when we sharpen it? Only with a unison this works because we can't lower a unison. So if we sharpen it, it becomes C sharp, so we have an augmented unison there. Now let's do C to C flat. So this is going to be 8 notes apart, so we call that an octave, and we spoke about that in other lessons. So what do we do to the octave? So for the octave, that's a perfect as well. So if I flatten the octave by 1 semitone, it now becomes a diminished eighth there because we have a perfect octave, and all we can do to the perfect is lower it by a semitone or raise it by a semitone, and when we lower the perfect, we end up with a diminished. So it'd be a diminished eighth there, C to C flat. So that's the perfects and the unisons. Let's have a look at the major intervals and what happens to them when we lower or raise the pitch. So let's do C to E flat. We still do our count the same. C, D, E, so it's a third of some sort. We bring up our C major scale because that's our first note, and we can see if it goes C to E, it's a major third. But I've lowered it by 1 semitone, it's now E flat. We bring up our chart. What happens when a major, when we flatten it, it becomes minor. So C to E flat would be a minor third. What if we were to go C to D sharp? Again, I just do my count. C, D, so it's a second of some sort. We bring up our C major scale. We know that the second C to D would be a major second, but this is D sharp, so we've raised it. So we bring up our chart, what do we do to a major? When we raise it, it becomes augmented. So C to D sharp would be an augmented second. So let's do E to C. This time we do our count again, E, F, G, A, B, C. So it's a sixth of some sort. We bring up our E major scale because our first note is E. And we know with the major sixth it's a C sharp. So we've lowered that to make it a C. And what do we do to the major? We just make it minor when we lower it. So E to C would be a minor sixth interval there. Let's do another one. Now let's do B flat to A flat. So we do our count as usual. B, C, D, E, F, G, A. So it's going to be a seventh of some sort. So I bring up my B flat major scale, and I can see if it's a natural A, it'd be a major seventh, but we've made it A flat. And again, what do we do with the major? We make it minor when we flatten it, so it'd be a minor seventh interval there. B flat to A flat would be a minor seventh interval. So let's do a few more. Let's try C to E double flat this time. So we still have our count the same, C, D, E, so it's a third of some sort. We bring up our C major scale, and we know C to E is a major third. We look at our next chart. What happens when we flatten a major? It becomes minor, but we've flattened it twice. So we flatten it again, so it becomes diminished. So we have a diminished third interval there. C to E double flat is a diminished third interval. Let's do another one like that. So let's go E to C flat this time. Do our count the same. E, F, G, A, B, C, so it's a sixth of some sort. We bring up the E major scale, and we know if it's C sharp, that would be a major sixth. So we go back one, would make it a minor sixth, and that would make it E to C. And then if we go back another one, because it's C flat, it becomes a diminished sixth there. So E to C flat is a diminished sixth. Now the intervals, we could also have double augmented and double diminished, but these are very rare. And it'd just be if I sharpen the augmented again, would make it a double augmented, and if I flatten the diminished again, and it'd make it a double diminished there. But again, these are very rare. So that's one way of doing intervals. I find this way fairly easy because you want to remember the key signatures to all the major scales anyway. But let's have a look at the second way. Now for this, we'll be counting semitones. So we'll be using the chromatic scale as well. And we must remember this new chart now. Just quickly, I prefer the first way because I already have to remember the major scales and their key signatures. This way I have to remember the chart as well. But if this works for you, that's fine. Now when we do this way, you can't just count the semitones because they repeat for different numbers. So you will start with the count like before. So let's bring up the chart and our chromatic scale and have a look at how to do this way. So let's try C to F. We still do our count exactly the same way. So C, D, E, F. It's a fourth. So I look down the side of my chart and I go to where it says 4. Now I'm not going to worry about any of the other part of the chart. I'm just going to use the part that says the 4. Then I count my semitones from C to F. So we have C to C sharp is 1, C sharp to D is 2, D to D sharp is 3, D sharp to E is 4, E to F is 5. And then I just look at 5 semitones. That's a perfect. So it'd be a perfect fourth there. Let's do another one. Let's do C to A. So again, I do my count. C, D, E, F, G, A, so it's a sixth. So now I go to the sixth on my chart and I'm only using the sixth there, and then I count my semitones from C to A. We have C to C sharp to D, D to D sharp to E, E to F, F to F sharp to G, G to G sharp, and G sharp to A. So that's going to be 9 semitones there. Then we just go back to our chart. We have 9 semitones. That makes it a major. So it'd be a major sixth there, C to A. So what if we had C to D sharp? Again, we do our count. C, D, so it's a second of some sort. And then I just count my semitones. C to C sharp to D, D to D sharp, and that's 3 semitones this time. So I go to my chart, 3 semitones for a second would be augmented. So C to D sharp would be an augmented second there. So let's do C to B with a double flat there. So again, we still count C to B, so C, D, E, F, G, A, B. So it's a seventh of some sort. So I look at my chart at the sevenths, and then I just count the semitones. Now we know B flat, if we flatten the B, it becomes B flat. If we flatten it again, it just becomes A. So B flat is also A. So we're counting from C to A. And this time we have 9 semitones there. C to B double flat, and if we look at our chart, 9 semitones for a seventh is diminished. So we'd have a diminished seventh there. So C to B double flat would be a diminished seventh interval. Now if we were writing these melodically, we looked at a lot of those harmonically. And let's say my first note was E on the staff, and the next note was C, and I wanted to find the interval. We just do it the same way. Bring up your E major scale, and that would be a minor sixth interval. Now if I wanted to do from that C to the A, which is the next note after the C, I don't start on the C because remember we always go from the lowest note. So I'd start from the A and go back to the C, and if we bring up our A major scale, it would be a minor third because in A major we'd have C sharp. So remember, we're always going from the lowest note when we're working out an interval. So that's 2 different ways you can work out intervals. In the next lesson, we'll look at intervals that are larger than an octave, so a compound interval, and we'll also do inverting intervals. So I hope you enjoyed this lesson. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon.